All right, y'all. YouTube channel, it's been a while since I've hit y'all with some Warrior news. Patron, we've been breaking it down. We've been breaking down every little nuance of Steph finding his shot back to the offense with Boogie minus Durant. Got a lot of folks surprised, a lot of hot takes. Be sure to check out the Patron if you really are a hardcore Warrior fan or just a hardcore basketball fan and want more of my takes. So they go into Houston. They kind of serve Houston, right? They go into OKC, they definitely serve OKC. You saw Russ was definitely in his feelings. And the offense, all of a sudden now, Bill Simmons is infamous for this Ewing theory. And what it is it's when a team loses a star player for a brief part of time, they actually play better because everybody plays a little bit harder trying to make up for the star player. I've mentioned this several times before, and I think I'd be remiss to not mention it again. So those of you that are like, yo, we don't need Kevin Durant, man. Look at this, man. We playing better. We playing ball movement, all this stuff. Yeah, for a small slice of time. So don't get carried away with that. But either way, rolling into Houston and OKC and kind of flexing on them was very impressive. DeMarcus Cousins has been very impressive, right? We're looking at prime Klay Thompson right now, right? So, the scary thing about this is that Klay and DeMarcus for the last few weeks have been the best Warriors, right? So you're getting this Warrior team and the two MVPs haven't been the best players on the floor. And so that's what's scary is what eventually the ceiling could be. Now in Houston, they just didn't bring it. I'm not going to front and say, oh, it was, they came, they clashed and it was. Houston didn't bring the energy. Now they were riding, a 9-game winning streak. And I think it was refreshing and rejuvenating for this Warriors team to go into Houston as the underdog, the hunter, not the hunted. And you saw that play out, right? Klay carried the way, man. But DeMarcus, and I'll touch a little bit about the offense, because if you think about the spacing, one, Boogie's passing is amazing. His hands and his passing are amazing, and he's showing that he's going to be a willing passer, at least right now. We have to remember that DeMarcus is on his best behavior for obvious reasons. But just think about the spacing of the floor, the math of the floor. If Boogie catches it on the box, right, and the double's coming from there, that's far more space than KD catching it on the high elbow. That's just simple math and geometry, right? The geometry of the court. So there's that, right? But then again, I think everybody turned up and elevated. I think we have to take context into account. You're going into Houston, you're going into OKC. After that loss to the Suns, right? I think we were going to get a turned up Warriors team regardless if Durant was out or not. Okay? Now, again, Houston didn't bring it. I will point out one thing. You watched Kevon Looney. You watched our bigs when they switched on to Harden. They did the full closeout to the left side. I'm talking about all the way on the left side of his body. That's a new tactic that seems to be effective against James Harden. I'm not saying you're going to shut him down, but it worked that night. More teams, more players are starting to close out on him that way. Excuse me here for a second. Got an itch on the nose. The OKC game, Russ, man, this is a reoccurring theme in my videos because I live by this philosophy. Your strength is your weakness. Russell Westbrook's strength is his relentlessness, his hard-headedness, his rigidness in the way he approaches the game, right? He just continues to go, right? And to prove people wrong, that chip on his shoulder, well, you saw it play out where they started to gap him. They were giving Draymond and company, Klay, were giving him the Draymond treatment. They were daring him to shoot, and he fed into it. Warriors baited him in to, what was he, like 0 of 8 from downtown, 0 of 7, 2 of 16 or 17 on the night. You saw him go into the locker room and try to gather himself in the hallway there, and he plays into it. And Golden State has done this over the years. They kind of know this. And when he got the tee, which he is suspended for, by the way, you could see Klay celebrate, like, got him again. They know how to get under his skin, and he feeds right into it. And the difference now is, people don't talk about it that much. I'm not saying Russ was a super athlete, right? And so him losing a step, it's not as noticeable. He's still freakishly athletic, but before you'd see him put his head down and get to the basket when he wasn't shooting well. And in this, he just kept on settling, in part from the defensive strategy of Golden State, in part because you're seeing him play less and less above the rim, and he's attacking less and less in some of these scenarios. Paul George, man, the shoulder, it's so symbolic, right? He's got the sore shoulder from just shouldering the load offensively, man. So, just like with Houston, both these games, look, man, the Warriors looked great, but I want to be fair and objective and say that we didn't get the best efforts from either Houston or OKC, man. But I think the real story, if you're a Warriors fan, is that bench. You saw Quinn Cook, you saw Alfonso McKinney. Again, if you go into my Patreon breakdowns, I discuss why I don't trust them moving forward. I really don't, and I think that needs to be worked out. Obviously, the core 4 or 5 look really good, but let's get into this news today. You clicked on the headline. DeMarcus Cousins left the game in the fourth quarter. I didn't notice it, and I'd be watching the game twice. Because, Boogie, he kind of has a hitch in his get-along anyway, kind of like Zion. Boy, you see Zion? I'm gonna bring you some Zion stuff here soon because I've been watching everything. How can you not watch him? But anyway, so Boogie, they thought it was a right ankle tweak. No big deal, right? Now it gets released today. He's going for an MRI because it's right foot soreness. Now, before I go any further, I want to explain the Achilles was the left. Okay, so it's not the same foot or ankle. But that also means he's probably compensating a little bit, whether it be physically or mentally on that right side. It'd be much better news if it was an ankle. Feet, hands, the medical science behind them, it just gets a lot more shaky. So fingers crossed, the MRI, maybe it's just precautionary, but what that has spun into the game tonight is Andrew Bogut's flying into San Antonio. Andrew Bogut probably is going to start at center tonight. Now, Kerr is he's old school in the sense that you kind of got to earn your spot in the rotation. I have my feelings because it's Andrew, they're going to throw him right in there. And you're going to see, it's going to be exciting, man. I'm excited. I know, Warrior fans are excited, but I'd much rather have waited. And the way DeMarcus is rolling right now, man, it's just, it's a shame that this happened. But let's look at it with some silver lining. It allows Bogut to kind of maybe establish himself with the team, and maybe DeMarcus just to take 7 days off or so and kind of rejuvenate the body a little bit. I know now he's just getting into shape. That's if it's just something minor. Again, the foot is always more dangerous than the ankle. We just don't know as much, man. And there's been a lot of injuries around the league. CJ McCollum, Malcom Brogdon, that are going to impact the playoffs. Not just the playoff seeding, the playoffs themselves. Malcom Brogdon with the plantar fasciitis, it's minor tear. And Buck fans, I ain't got to tell you how important this is. To me, I'll come out right and say it. This knocks them below Philadelphia and Toronto, Philadelphia, however you want to rank them. Because, he quietly was hitting the 50-40-90 club. And Brogdon, he is, and Warrior fans, if you're not familiar, he's kind of like their Iguodala, and he starts for them. So he probably has an even more big role. That's probably not even doing it justice. And what you see is a lot of the times when Giannis collapses the defense and he kicks it out for the 3, if a team is playing really good defense and they close out on the 3, or for whatever happened, the pass isn't accurate, Brogdon's a lot of the time the bailout on the weak side. He gets swung the ball and a guy's coming at him, and he's so strong and he's so good at finishing below the rim, putting that shoulder on you. He just is the key. He's really the second guy, the bailout guy. A lot of the time makes very good decisions, and then he's strong. He's very strong as a defender. He's adept at that fighting over and challenging from behind defense. They all are at this point in the season. Now, Milwaukee has depth. Connaughton, Snell, George Hill, right? But I think that Bud, at least up until the playoffs, is going to experiment. You saw in the Sixer game yesterday, they went with Mirotic. They went super big, super long. Pause. I just love to throw those in there. But anyway, I think it's a devastating injury, man. And plantar fasciitis, I don't have to tell you, I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor, but it's one of those ones where the time for return, the window's huge. Like, it's always like, 6 to 8 weeks. It's a very weird injury. Speaking of weird injuries, what happened to CJ McCollum is even more unique of an injury. Strained populitis? How do you pronounce this thing? Populitis? Basically, it's the tendon behind the knee. It looked like he blew his knee out. It was a scary scene for Trailblazers, but It's fortunate that he didn't, obviously, but this is an even more rare injury. And apparently, the only comparison we have is Garnett did it years ago, and he missed the entire playoffs. And basically, from what I understand is there's going to be stability issues in the knee. If it's not healthy, he's going to have stability issues in the knee throughout the knee. So they're saying reevaluate it in a week, and he dodged a bullet because, of course, all these teams are going to be positive, remain positive as they should, and put a positive spin on these things. But the reality of it is both of these injuries, for these fan bases and basketball fans, you may not see these players the remainder of the season. McCollum's still relatively a young player. Brogdon's still a young player. You don't want to, I know that both these teams have aspirations, Milwaukee further than Portland's, but at this, you can't risk your career and try to play on some of these weirder injuries. Again, if you have a sprained ankle, a strained MCL, right? One of these common injuries, you know the procedures, you know the timetable, they know how to heal it. These two injuries, man, that's not the case. So, I want to see everybody at full strength because I don't like teams and fan bases being able to reach for excuses when the times come. So I hope that both of them get back, but it's just fair warning that because of the uniqueness of these injuries, we may not see either of these guys when it comes playoff time. And I don't have to tell you that changes things drastically for both these teams. Now, I didn't talk about what Portland's going to do. If I'm Stouts, I play Rodney Hood. Rodney Hood has historically been a guy who kind of needs more minutes and needs more touches and plays better that way. And I think it would serve better for Seth to stay as the third guard where he can match up against second units. And, Portland has the depth, but the bottom line is McCollum was a guy you could give the ball and he could get you a bucket. And that back and forth with he and Dame. So again, maybe look for the Ewing effect for a few games, but ultimately, man, it weakens both these teams' chances headed into the playoffs. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.
I've been winning so long, it's like alchemy.